The medical bay aboard the starship Dauntless buzzed with sterile efficiency. Beeping monitors, glowing panels, and hushed voices moving with practiced rhythm. In the center of it all lay Lyra, the alien girl the crew had rescued months earlier from a shattered escape pod drifting in the Curus Belt. Her species, the Elvari, were fragile-looking beings with luminous skin and wide silver eyes. But beneath that delicate exterior was a resilience that had carried her through countless dangers. Now, however, that resilience seemed to be fading. Lyra's breaths came shallow, her eyelids fluttering as if even consciousness was slipping away. She had fought hard against the infection ravaging her system, but the ship's doctors had exhausted every treatment they knew. None of their medicine was designed for Elvari biology. Commander Arden, tall and severe, stood at the foot of her bed with his arms folded. "We've done all we can," he said flatly. His words hung in the cold air like a final verdict. Around him, medics lowered their heads, reluctant to admit defeat but bound by the truth of their limitations. Jace, the ship's mechanic, lingered near the door. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had no medical training, no authority in this sterile world of medicine and protocol. But he couldn't leave. Since the day they pulled Lyra from the wreckage, he'd felt an unexplainable bond with her. She had been more than a curiosity or a rescue mission. She had become a friend, someone who looked at him without judgment, someone who listened. When Arden turned to leave, Jace moved forward. "So that's it? We just give up?" His voice cracked with restrained anger. The commander's gaze hardened. "She's not human, Jace. We don't even know if her body was ever meant to survive our world. Don't let sentiment cloud judgment." But Jace wasn't listening. He stepped to Lyra's bedside, ignoring the looks from the medics. Her hand, thin and trembling, lay limp against the blanket. Without hesitation, he took it gently into his own. Her skin was cool, almost translucent, and for a moment he thought she might slip away entirely. Then her fingers twitched. Barely, but enough to make his heart surge. He leaned closer, whispering, "You're not alone. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The monitors showed no miraculous recovery, no sudden burst of strength. But for the first time in hours, Lyra's breathing steadied. Her silver eyes flickered open just a fraction, focusing on him. The faintest trace of a smile appeared, as though his presence alone had pulled her back from the edge. Behind them, the medics exchanged uneasy glances. They didn't understand why his touch seemed to matter, but none of them dared interrupt. Commander Arden paused at the door, watching silently, something unreadable crossing his face. For Jace, the moment was simple but absolute. As long as Lyra fought, he would fight with her. Protocol be damned. The medbay's lights dimmed to evening cycle, but Jace stayed rooted to the same spot, Lyra's cool hand still wrapped in his. Nurses came and went, monitoring her vitals, adjusting fluids, recording the slow decline that their instruments insisted was inevitable. Each time someone suggested he step out, Jace shook his head. She shouldn't wake up to strangers. She should wake up to someone who cares. Hours stretched into a blur. Jace's back ached from leaning over the cot, but he refused to let go. He whispered stories about his childhood on a colony farm, about the way the moons rose in twin arcs over the plains, about how he used to think he'd never see stars beyond that horizon until fate pulled him onto the Dauntless. He didn't know if Lyra could hear him, but sometimes her eyelids flickered, and that was enough to keep him talking. Memories of how she had arrived washed over him. That first day, her pod had been a wreck of twisted alloy and shattered glass. Everyone expected to find a corpse inside, but instead there she was, injured, malnourished, but alive. At first, the crew treated her like an exotic specimen, debating whether she'd be a liability. But over time, Lyra proved herself. She learned their language quickly, offered insights about alien star charts, and even shared laughter in the mess hall when Jace fixed her translator to stop spitting out absurd phrases. She wasn't just a survivor. She had become part of their family. To watch her fade now felt like betrayal. Commander Arden returned during the night cycle, his expression carved from stone. "Turner," he said, using Jace's surname, Get some rest. You're no use to anyone like this. Jace met his gaze. If she were human, would you tell me the same? Or would you be pushing for more tests, more chances? The words landed heavier than he intended. Arden's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he turned sharply and walked out, boots echoing against the sterile floor. As silence settled again, Lyra stirred faintly. Her lips parted, a soft whisper barely escaping. Stay. Jace leaned closer, his throat tightening. I'm here, he promised. I'll stay as long as it takes. For a brief moment, her hand squeezed his, weak but deliberate. The gesture sent a rush of defiance through him. He wasn't a doctor, wasn't a leader, but in this room, he was the only thing standing between Lyra and the darkness pressing at her edges. Elsewhere on the ship, rumors spread. Some crew muttered that she was a liability, a distraction pulling resources from their mission. Others admired Jace's loyalty but whispered that he was wasting his strength on a lost cause. Jace didn't care. He had already made his choice. Even if she slipped away in the end, she would never slip away alone. Sleep tugged at Jace's eyes, but he resisted. He dozed in fits, head against the edge of the bed, waking each time Lyra shifted or exhaled unevenly. His body screamed for rest, but his heart refused to abandon her. The ship outside the med bay moved steadily through its patrol route, yet the crew's mood had grown restless. Some officers whispered that Jace had gone soft. Others argued in the mess that, alien or not, Lyra deserved every chance at survival. Tension threaded through the halls, quietly dividing them. One medic, Dr. Celine, finally broke the silence around Jace. She paused by the cot, her voice hushed. It isn't unheard of connection making a difference. Touch, words, even just presence. Sometimes patients hold on longer than they should, just because someone refuses to let go. Jace glanced at her, exhausted but firm. Then I'll keep holding on, however long it takes. That night, something shifted. Lyra's breathing grew ragged, her body trembling as if locked in some inner storm. Her head rolled against the pillow, eyes darting beneath closed lids. Jace squeezed her hand. Lyra, I'm here. Whatever you're seeing, don't face it alone. Her voice slipped out, faint but desperate. The fire, the silence. I can't. Jace's stomach tightened. He realized she wasn't lost in delirium. She was reliving the crash that had left her stranded. He leaned closer, grounding her with his words. You're not in the pod anymore. You're safe. You're not alone. Her trembling eased fractionally, as though his voice pulled her out of the nightmare's grip. For a moment, her eyes cracked open, silver irises shimmering with tears. Why? She rasped. Why stay? Jace didn't hesitate. Because you stayed. When no one else trusted you, you fought to belong here. You're part of us now. You're part of me. The monitors still showed decline, but her expression softened with a fragile calm. She closed her eyes again, no longer thrashing, her hand tightening around his. Word spread quickly through the med bay. She responded to him. Crew members began to stop by, lingering at the door, watching the strange bond between human and alien play out in quiet defiance of the odds. Some felt hope ignite. Others muttered that it was sentiment clouding reason. Commander Arden called a private meeting, his frustration boiling over. We are not a hospital ship, he snapped. Our mission cannot hinge on one alien girl. But Dr. Celine countered. It's not just her. It's who we are if we abandon her. If we let her die when we might have helped her fight, what does that make us? The debate raged behind closed doors, but in the med bay, Jace kept his vigil. He didn't need arguments or policy. All he needed was the faint pressure of her fingers wrapped around his, proof that she was still here, and that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't ready to let go. The med bay had grown quiet, the kind of stillness that made every beep of the monitors sound like a countdown. Jace sat slouched in his chair, his hands still entwined with Lyra's, refusing to let go. The others kept their distance now, giving him space, as if instinctively aware that his presence was somehow tethering her to life. Then, without warning, the monitor spiked. Her breathing hitched, her whole body arching as though she were caught between worlds. Alarms blared, drawing doctors rushing to her side. Jace held on tighter, his voice rising above the chaos. "Lyra, don't let go. Stay with me." Her eyes snapped open, wide and shimmering silver, glowing brighter than before. The medics froze mid-motion. Against all logic, her vitals began to climb, weak but steady, like a failing engine catching a spark. Lyra gasped, clutching Jace's hand as if pulling strength directly through him. Dr. Celine blinked at the readings. This shouldn't be possible," she murmured. Yet no one dared interfere. It wasn't the medicine saving her. It was something beyond their science, something they couldn't measure on their machines. Hours passed, and instead of fading, Lyra stabilized. Her breathing grew even, her color returned faintly, and she whispered words in halting English. "You stayed." Jace leaned close, his throat tight. "I told you. I'm not going anywhere." The crew gathered outside the glass wall, silent witnesses to the impossible. Some looked humbled, others awed, but none could deny what they were seeing. A bond that crossed species, pulling someone back from the edge when reason said it couldn't be done. Commander Arden finally entered. His usually stern face softened. He looked at Jace, then at Lyra, and for once he had no order to give, no regulation to cite. He simply nodded, almost in respect, before leaving the room quietly. By the next morning, Lyra was sitting up weakly, sipping water. Her recovery was fragile but real. She spoke softly of memories, of her people, of her escape pod, of the moment she thought she would die alone in the void. And then she looked at Jace, eyes shimmering. "But I wasn't alone. Not here. Not with you." The story spread across the Dauntless. To some, it was a miracle. To others, a reminder that compassion could be as vital as any weapon or shield. For Jace, it was simpler. He had refused to let her go, and in doing so, he had proven that life wasn't measured only by biology or protocols. It was measured by connection, by the courage to stand beside someone when everyone else walked away. When Lyra finally managed a real smile, fragile but radiant, Jace felt something shift. Not just in her, but in himself and maybe in the whole crew. Against all odds, they had witnessed that sometimes survival didn't come from medicine or machines. Sometimes it came from a hand held and a promise kept. And in that quiet corner of the galaxy, hope lived again.